Surprise is one of the words being used to describe the announcement made by the President Cyril Ramaphosa, who's appointed now Advocate Mothibi as the new National Director of Public Prosecutions. This appointment goes live from the 1st of February this year, and it follows an advisory panel which was led by the Justice Minister, Mameloko Kubayi, finding that none of the 6 shortlisted candidates were suitable for the role. The President has gone outside the formal interview process, choosing Mothibi, who currently leads and heads up the Special Investigating Unit. Let's talk about the appointment with the presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, and KSAC Executive Director, Lawson Naidu. Good morning to the pair of you. Thank you very much for the time. Compliments of the season. Let's get straight into it. Vincent, I'd love to start with you first. What were some of the other reasons given as to the unsuitability of those candidates who had been interviewed? We know that that report was given to the President on the 12th of December last year.
Compliments of the season, man, to you and to your viewers. Well, I can't get into the details except to say the President appreciated the thoroughness of the exercise carried by the advisory panel for the selection of the NDPP. And in response to their report and their advice, the President had to then look outside of that process, so to speak, for the most appropriate candidate that will lead the NPA.
Is the President going to reveal, Vincent, some of his, the rationale behind this decision insofar as the recommendations from the advisory panel? I mean, I think it's something, because of the importance of that office and the role, the public needs to know why the 6 interviewed didn't meet the standard.
Well, I think one has to be mindful and respectful to the individuals, number one. And so that information will need to factor that and may not be available for those reasons, but enough for the President to consider them as provided by the advisory panel. I think the issue here should be, is Advocate Mothibi the most appropriate person? The answer is yes. He has the prerequisite experience in the security cluster or criminal justice cluster. He has all the right skills and qualifications to undertake such a task. And I think that's where we need to focus on, that the President has managed to find the most suitable candidate for the role.
Well, let's quickly, before I bring in Lawson, Vincent, talk about the finding process and landing on Advocate Mothibi, because we know that these interviews, you are nominated or you're invited to, there's a shortlist and then you're invited to interview. You know, if he was somebody who was just so undeniably identified as somebody who could take on this important role, why wasn't he interviewed in the initial stages?
Well, I think before we even get to that, let's appreciate first that the President is not legally obligated to have a panel and to have these interviews as they happened. It was more out of his discretion, recognizing the importance of the role of the NDPP within the criminal justice cluster, that he embarks on such a process. And therefore, he's not in a way restricted to look further and beyond that process. If the process is not able to assist him as he seeks, then he's well within his legal remit in terms of the Constitution as well as in terms of the NPA Act to look elsewhere, if you like, for the most appropriate candidate. So it was not necessary that Advocate Mothibi be interviewed, but it's also important to highlight, Iman, that the panel struggled even to get to the 32 candidates that applied. There was even an extension to the deadline that they were given, because there weren't so many people who were coming forward, putting their hand up for the position. So that also then influenced the manner in which the President sought to conclude the process.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate the point, Vincent. It might be argued that when you do promise the public an open and transparent process that allows us to acquaint ourselves with the candidate for this really, really important role, that, it's followed through, even to the end, and having Mothibi presented to the public and make his case for that appointment outside of the appointment he currently occupies. And maybe we can come back to that issue if you wish. But I'll bring in Lawson now. Lawson, good morning to you as well, and welcome to the program. Your thoughts on this appointment? You've been watching the interviews quite closely yourself.
Good morning to Vincent as well. Thank you. Look, I think, we certainly welcome the announcements of Advocate Mothibi's appointment as the next National Director of Public Prosecutions. I think for a whole range of reasons, he brings a wealth of experience of having actually run a critical institution within the criminal justice sector. As Vincent has highlighted, he's been the head of the SIU for a number of years, and the SIU has done a sterling job in dealing with these investigations and recouping funds to the public purse from corrupt activities. The concern that I think people in civil society have is around the process of Advocate Mothibi's appointment. Having gone through an open process with 6 candidates having been interviewed, I think it would have been preferable for the president to have said to the panel, here's another candidate that, if you've not been able to identify anyone from the 6, here's another candidate that I think you should consider. And there should have been an interview of Advocate Mothibi before announcing his appointment. I think that is an important part of building public trust and confidence in the National Prosecuting Authority, something that this process is designed to achieve. And that's why President Ramaphosa, to his credit, has gone through this process back in 2018 before Shamila Batoyi was appointed, and again now in 2025, 2026. It's something that I think needs to be formalized in legislation so that future presidents are bound to follow such a process and not have appointments at the whim of the president. So I think from a process point of view, there's been a muddying of the waters in the manner of Advocate Mothibi's appointment.
Vincent, how would you counter that?
Well, I hear Lawson's point. I think one has to consider a number of issues here. One, time was of the essence. After the panel had embarked on the search exercise and conducted interviews and concluded that none of the candidates were suitable, with the holiday season upon us and Advocate Mothibi turning 65 this month, it was important that by the 1st of February, we are able to have a new leader leading the NDPP, or rather leading the NPA. And so for that reason, the president had to move fairly quickly, and in doing so, balance the need for the prerequisite experience, as well as somebody that will bring in a lot of credibility into the role. And I think Lawson has highlighted the nature of experience and standing of Advocate Mothibi. So I think in that regard, if there are no issues or concerns on the individual and their bona fides and credibility to lead such an important institution, then we should be satisfied that the president applied his mind properly, and that for a number of reasons, logistically and time-wise, it was not going to be possible to reconvene the panel for Advocate Mothibi's interview.
All right, let's go then to where the rubber hits the road. And we know this has been such a controversial appointment over time, Shamila Batoyi becoming the first NDPP to actually see out the role, and even then leaving on quite a controversial and a chaotic note by excusing herself from the Nkabinde inquiry towards the end of last year. Let's talk about the work that the SIU and the NPA do together. The one is an investigative body, the other is a prosecutorial body. How do you think the experience, Lawson, that Advocate Mothibi brings in terms of understanding the guts of how investigations work, how that could feed well into cases that would be viably prosecuted, could work in his favor?
Thanks. I think that's an important point because, one of the attributes that Andy Mothibi brings as the incoming NDPP is that he has worked closely with the law enforcement agencies in the criminal justice sector over a long period of time, especially on state capture and corruption cases. But we must also be cognizant of the fact that the SIU largely operates within the realms of civil law. They aimed at asset recoveries, recovering money stolen back to the public purse, whereas the NPA has to prove a case within the realm of criminal law beyond a reasonable doubt. So the SIU, for example, refers cases to the NPA for further investigation to put together the necessary evidence to mount a successful prosecution in the criminal courts. So he has the experience, he understands, I think, the challenges that the NPA have. And I think foremost amongst those challenges is the lack of capacity, adequate capacity within the NPA to prosecute some of those more complex and serious state capture and corruption cases. That's a challenge that is still going to be sitting on his index when he gets there. There are issues around the functional independence, operational independence of the NPA, which has yet to be dealt with legislatively, despite commitments to that effect from both the President and the Minister of Justice. So, the Advocate Mothibi needs to be given full realm to rebuild public confidence, to restore the capacity of the NPA, not just to prosecute state capture and corruption cases, but to prosecute all criminal cases that affect South Africans across the country.
And there has been conversation, Lawson, about public confidence in the NPA being damaged, or her stepping out of the Nkabinde inquiry in the way that she did, having a corrosive effect on the reputation of the NPA. We're hoping to talk to her and get her perspective on this. But to that point, Lawson, Vincent, that Lawson's just made, what is the President's thoughts? What are the President's thoughts about the risk that the NPA potentially might face under Mothibi's leadership in terms of from a prosecutorial independence perspective, strategy, courtroom competence? And with that in mind, what support is envisaged to really scaffold him in the role and to set him up for success?
I think, Lawson has actually outlined it perfectly with respect to, the challenges the NPA has faced and is faced with, and what will be required to raise the levels of capacity and application, so to speak, with respect to the prosecution of the various criminal cases and corruption cases. And I think the President is well aware of all of those realities. I mean, as you alluded earlier on, it's the first time that we've had an NDPP that has completed a full term, and in the past it was not only just national directors of public prosecutions that were reshuffled willy-nilly. The entire organization's capacity was eroded for a whole host of criminal and corrupt reasons. And now we're at a stage where the sort of rebuilding of the institution has started, albeit with some challenges over this near-ending term. And the President's hope and focus is going to be on accelerating that rebuilding of the NPA, adding enough capacity to deal with these matters, and some very complex. So that's where the President's focus is to ensure that the NPA is given all the necessary tools to make it a successful prosecutions agency, and more importantly, one that will reclaim public confidence in how it approaches various matters that it has to prosecute.
Well, let's just, in closing, gentlemen, talk about what's next and how you will be looking for, the hallmarks of success in Advocate Mothibi's ability to really rein in the NPA and to certainly increase its performance and its credibility in the public eye. So to Lawson, for you, what are the clear performance benchmarks you would be looking forward to witnessing out of Mothibi's leadership?
Well, I think there are a range of factors here. From the institutional side is, as we've discussed now, is rebuilding the capacity of the NPA as a whole to be able to execute its constitutional mandate, which is to prosecute criminal cases without fear, favour, or prejudice. But it's also, there are challenges that are there. The positions of deputy national directors of public prosecutions are vacant at the moment. Those need to be filled as a matter of urgency. So, Advocate Mothibi has got to go in there with a new team that is yet to be appointed. And again, the presidency, and perhaps Vincent can tell us what process the president is going to follow in appointing those deputy national directors. Now that we have Advocate Mothibi there, hopefully he will be consulted and will have a critical hand in putting together that leadership team at the NPA that's going to work alongside him in this challenging task of rebuilding public confidence and increasing conviction rates across the country. But I think there's a level of confidence in Advocate Mothibi's ability to do that, given his track record at the SIU in particular. And let's also not forget that, there's the report of the National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council, which has recommended the creation of an Office of Public Integrity, which we've yet to hear from the presidency on as well. And that is envisaged that the SIU will play an important part of that part of the anti-corruption architecture as well. So the Advocate Mothibi understands these different institutions within the anti-corruption framework, and will play a key role in building the capacity across the board. So there's a huge amount of work for him to do to get the right people in place to do the job that he's entrusted to lead.
Yeah. Vincent, in closing, we've just got about a minute or two. We'd love your final thoughts. And then just to circle back to, again, the issue of, an NDPP being the president's protector sort of came up with relation to Advocate Batoy. You heard the criticism from the ad hoc committee, particularly on issues like Phala Phala. Is this something, is Mothibi going to be able to do his work without fear or favour? Will this review, particularly on a case that has really blighted the president's reputation with regard to Phala Phala, might that be something that lands on his desk again?
Well, Advocate Batoy had a full term where she was able to carry out her duties without any fear or favour. The same thing will happen with Advocate Mothibi, regardless of the matter. I think it's been already proven that the president has no desire or intention to interfere with the work of law enforcement agencies, even on matters that relate directly to him. So that's a non-issue as far as we are concerned. With respect to the issue of vacancies in terms of deputies at the NPA and so on, that process is already underway. So Advocate Mothibi will not be starting off a blank canvas. Obviously, as the new head,
Vincent Magwenya did warn us that his signal might drop, and it's dropped there. Thank you very much for his time. Vincent Magwenya speaks for the president. And your time, Lawson Naidoo, you are the executive director at KSAC.